If I ask your parents at your camp, would they say that you were a perfect example of good customer service?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Camp leaders, win back your time to what matters most, your campers. Bolin's comprehensive accounting back office solutions and tech-enabled team free up your staff to focus on your mission. Visit bolinhq.com to learn more and book a free 2-hour financial diagnostic.
Remember what sparked your passion for camp? Ultra Camp knows it's about the people, not the paperwork. That's why they built a platform to simplify your camp management. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker Podcast, brought to you by Ultra Camp, by Bolin, and the Camper Recruitment and Retention Playbook from Joanna Warren-Smith and me. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp consultant specializing in solving the problem I most often hear from camp directors. Parents just don't read.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. I'm also a summer camp consultant specializing in leadership, staff management, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm an all-around great guy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Withrow. I'm a camp director in Southwestern Pennsylvania, and I'm not a guy at all. So great or otherwise.
That's
Heather,
a plus.
welcome
You're
to
very lucky.
CampHacker. Some of you may know Heather's voice. She was co-host with Joe and I in the Fundraising at Camp podcast. So great to have you back on the network, Heather.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, we're grateful. Heather, how did you get started at camp?
I got started as a 4-H camper as a kid. My parents would tell you I went to camp and I never came back. And
Yeah,
that's pretty much true. I found a community there that would accept all my weird and crazy for who I am. And I've loved it ever since.
oh, that's great. And where camp are you at now?
I am at Jamonville, which is a church camp in Southwestern Pennsylvania, because, if you look it up, we're named after a dead French guy, as all camps should be.
That is perfect. That's perfect. We're grateful to have you. So as said in the opening, we're going to talk about customer service. We had the idea, and certainly if you've been to the Tri-State Conference, there's been a lot of folks represented that have come out of the Disney world to speak there, and the Imagineering books of some form have been mentioned on the show before, but we thought we would just take a thoughtful re-examination of customer service and how we could do it well and really how we could up our game. Chris, this was your idea. Do you mind taking us through where this came from?
Yeah. Where it came from is it came from a lot of the work that I do. Sometimes camps will hire me because they need help in building community. Like, how do they create a culture around the camp? And one of the first things that I do with them is that we talk about visible and invisible culture, right? Visible culture being the things that you can see, uniforms, accents, particular phrases, and invisible culture being the things you can't see, like the values and sort of the schedule, like all those other things. And the first thing I do is talk about visible and invisible culture, and then ask the group to think of places where the visible culture is very apparent. And there's all sorts of examples. Disney is always the biggest example, but there's other examples, HGTV and Fox News. It's very clear in their visible culture what their invisible culture is. It's very clear through the music they use, the colors they use, the sort of graphics, like the direction and speed of graphics on the screen. It's all visibly trying to tell you what's going on in the background. So that's why I wanted to talk about that, is just like, where can we look for inspiration? Because culture building is actually all around us. And if you're looking to build culture at your camp or change culture at your camp, I mean, yes, definitely hire people like me. But the first step would really to be look around and be like, who's doing it well? So that's what I wanted to throw to you guys. Like, who do you think does it really well? And it doesn't have to be kid or camp related. Like, I'm trying to come up with a bunch in my head right now, but like, there's a lot of places that focus their attention on building an intentional culture. And they've done a lot of the groundwork for us. So
I tend to think of airlines when I think that way, that nobody is better at building customer loyalty than an airline. You ask anyone who flies on a regular basis, who their preferred airline is, and they will not hesitate for lots of
Delta.
different reasons. Yeah, I'm a United girl. I have the credit card, I have the points. Don't mess with my United points, man. But I will go out of my way to fly United because of the way they've built loyalty in me.
When I think about culture and its representation, I think it's interesting to come at this from a couple of different ideas. And I said customer service from the beginning. I like the direction we're going more towards culture, although it's all part of the same thing in its own way. And I one of the things that's been interesting about this job and getting to see camp's work is that I'm sometimes very pleasantly surprised by how they care for outsiders and sometimes extremely disappointed. And to see parents during drop off day or how they treat my wife Beth and I when we go do training, it's interesting to see how that all matches up. And that I've seen some of the biggest disappointments have been some who yell the loudest about how intentional they are. And it doesn't trickle down through everything. So I'm surprised at the things that it doesn't. And I was thinking about, we kind of have, in this case, I'm thinking that we have three different audiences for our culture: kids, obviously, parents, yes, and staff as well. And one of the things that has been interesting to hear, and I've heard it from camp directors who are good at self-evaluation, that welcoming in new staff, welcoming in international staff, introducing them to the camp culture has to be incredibly intentional. And a lot of camps don't do that, or the really thoughtful camp directors realize in the middle of it, they're like, oh, we're not doing this well. We need to reset and think about this. So within those three areas, I think there's lots to talk about. I think there's lots to examine.
Absolutely. I think building culture for staff is the first thing. And you did say customer service in the beginning, and that's actually how I got to this topic.
Yeah.
And we bring up Disney all the time. And I want us in the context of this conversation to name other things than Disney, because I feel
Yeah.
like when we bring up Disney culture, it's really hard to make the translations like what I'm doing with these 150 kids in the woods versus this international mega corporation. In any
Right.
case,
Yeah.
it's just the way that at Disney World, there are specific ways in which the staff can interact with the public. For instance, you'll never hear a Disney employee in the park use the word unfortunately. They do not start sentences with, they're just simply not allowed, because their invisible culture is anything is possible here. And so they want to put that out there. Now, it's those little things that help build a culture, but also can solve a bunch of problems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just, I'm always going on about intention, but like it can solve a bunch of problems if you give it enough forethought and really find a way to drive it home.
What I like about that, Chris, is that is trainable. Like they've been trained to do that. And that just meant that somebody broke down the process, listening to conversations of their staff talking to guests, and said, oh, this is a problem because of that, our philosophy that anything's possible. And then they figured out a way to train their staff not to talk that way, or to be conscious of their language in all circumstances. And that to me is fascinating. Like that sounds like such a huge deal to train people out of using one word, but it's just a process. They sat down and said, okay, this is something we don't want to say here. Let's figure out how to make that so easy that our staff don't have to think about it. Learning it so easy that our staff don't have to think about it, which I think is encouraging. Heather, you look like you got something to say. You have a thought?
Oh, it's just my face. Sorry.
Thoughtful kind of look.
Well, I think that being intentional, you can really tell sometimes when a place is not intentional or not intentional fast enough. When you look at the example of Red Lobster in the United States, they kept doing all you can eat, all you can eat, all you can eat. And now they're all you can bankrupt because they did not pay attention to what was happening within their culture and within their system, and they didn't pay attention to who their customer is. And I'd use another example of Joanne Fabrics. Being a longtime camp person, I can't even tell you how much money I've spent at craft stores over the years. But they didn't listen to their customer. They forgot who was loyal to them and how to cater to them and listen to their needs. So they went all in on fleece fabrics. I'm told I'm a little out of my depth there, but on the fleece blankets and that kind of thing. And that was not what their main customer was looking for. And now, as a result, their business is closing. So I think choosing not to be intentional is making a choice that's obvious, that's in the end going to be a real problem for you.
I worry when we have these discussions that it just feels like another thing to be overwhelmed about as a camp director, which is why I want to say that these are our problems that we can break down. And this is the sort of thing that you can start this year and get better at every year going forward. For you, I'll ask it of each of you, what do you think are some of the easiest opportunities to demonstrate your culture, to set up your culture, easiest opportunities to start it, I guess, but maybe even some of the easiest things that people might be missing?
Marketing. It's just the pictures that you use on your website. That's the first thing. I think at a distance, if people can identify what your invisible culture is, that's a success. I mean, I in the 90s in the mall, Abercrombie and Fitch is a male clothing store, and they would put out this white, ripped young man to stand on the front door, just stand there in a pair of jeans, shirtless usually, or with a tank top. And from a distance, I understood what the culture was. I understood what they were selling and who they were selling to. It was super successful in that way. And as a matter of fact, they would have there were no windows. There was no way to look in. Like the windows were shuttered in the standalone stores. And I always thought that was such a powerful risk. Like they're directing your attention to this single thing, this single tool that they're using. And they're expecting to they're expecting it to tell everyone what they're about. So I would start with something visual, like what represents your camp, like what should be above the fold as it was on the website, and what can you put out there that people say, oh, I have an idea about what this is about. That would be that. Yeah, I think that's the first thing I would tell people. Then I have about 70 ties for second, but that's my first one.
Well, I like that too, because I think I've probably looked at more camp websites than most people in the world. And I'm always disappointed when people put a picture of their buildings as the first thing on their website.
Yeah.
What are you selling when that's your story? Is look at our beautiful buildings. And I think it's not intentional, but you have to realize that there are messages to all of those things. What's the low-hanging fruit to your mind, Heather?
Who answers the phone and how are they trained?
Oh, yeah.
As a mom myself, I want to know who I'm calling to get information from, because they're the first hurdle in me deciding if I'm going to trust a camp with my children.
Exactly.
So who's answering the phone? Who answers my email? And do they do it in a professional way? Do I have their full name and their direct line, or at the very least their position on the email, so that I know who I can contact at camp, who I started this conversation with, and who will help me get to the right person.
Oh, I love that.
Yep.
So it's like public facing stuff is the first, I think is the first way to go. Because at the end of the day, these are businesses, and controlling your culture from the outside perspective, that's how you keep your business going.
Camp leaders, are you bogged down with bookkeeping, accounting, and other back office tasks? Does it take precious time away from what matters most, your campers? Imagine a solution that frees up your staff to focus on creating impactful and memorable experiences for your campers. That's where Bolin comes in. Bolin offers comprehensive accounting back office solutions designed specifically for camps. Our tech-enabled team handles everything from payroll and bookkeeping to financial reporting, compliance, expense management, spend control, and more, allowing your staff to passionately pursue your number one purpose. With Bolin, you can streamline your camp's financial operations, reduce stress, and ensure your team is free to make a lasting impact in your campers' lives. It's time to win back your time and work with a financial partner that truly understands camps. Whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, overnight, or day camp, Bolin has a solution for you. Visit bolinhq.com to learn more and book a free 2-hour financial diagnostic. The report is yours whether you sign up or not. Let Bolin take care of your accounting needs so you can focus on what truly matters, your campers.
Exclusive to CampHacker listeners. Generate fresh ideas for activities, staff training, marketing campaigns, and more with UltraCamp's plug-and-play AI prompt guide. Download it for free at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Why struggle with multiple systems when one can do it all? UltraCamp offers a platform that simplifies your work by combining all aspects of camp management into one seamless solution. UltraCamp brings everything you need into one easy-to-use platform. Plan schedules and activities with just a few clicks. Register and track campers easily organize, schedule, and automate your communications. Manage payments and donations seamlessly. Get back to what you love. UltraCamp helps you spend less time on admin tasks and more time creating unforgettable camp experiences. Ready to see if UltraCamp is the perfect fit? Schedule your free personalized demo at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Another kind of first impression thing that I have heard from parents, and we've been talking to parents considering buying a camp, is that we as a camp culture, for very good reasons, tend to put our young staff forward as the face of our organizations. We've trained them hard. We like to show that we are giving young adults the opportunities to do all these things. But a thing I hear is, okay, but who's the adult in charge? And if we're showing all these pictures of them and none of the directors, whoever the adults are on site, makes parents nervous. I think we do it for good-hearted reasons, but it is also a message that we may not be intending to send, but that people are picking up. When it's just young adults and kids, there's no representation of the senior staff at the camp. Parents pick up on that. I'm watching Chris's thoughtful face. Here it comes.
I know. You could see the thought bubble. I think, and I don't know, but I think the thing about putting young adults on the website is the same reason we put young adults on advertising for literally everything. It communicates youth. It communicates energy. I hear what you're saying, and that was what my thoughtful face was. I was like, wow, that's really true. People have to click through to find out who the camp director is or even see someone who's over the age of 25. I'm just wondering what kind of picture you can show that sort of marries both those things, because at the end of the day, in advertisements, we're trained to look at and look for young, unattractive people.
And I get that for like standard commercial products, but when you're talking about a thing that involves this massive transfer of both money and trust because a camp costs a lot, and we have to have parents have to trust us to do that thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I agree. I'm just trying to think how to marry both of those things together.
It's still the majority of our pictures with adults in them are going to be young adults. The majority of our pictures in the world.
And the majority of our counselors are young people. Right?
Yeah.
So almost any employee that you put up there is going to be like 19.
Yeah. So how do we look after people look after families, campers, staff in a way that reflects our camp culture, our intention that we create in our camp culture?
I think clarity is really important. I think about the Brene Brown quote, clear is kind and kind is clear, that starting from even before they're registered, but certainly after they're registered, we want to tell them what to expect. We want to tell them, okay, you're going to come to camp, you're going to check in, you need to bring these things, not in a get a drink out of a fire hose kind of way, but we want clear, consistent communication that is accurate. I discovered when I came here that we had been sending out a paper for years that said everybody parks at the adventure center. Nobody parks at the adventure center. They never have. Who parks there? New campers and parents. Why is that a
When they read
problem?
the form.
Because there's no one there to greet them. Yeah, well, that's true. When they read the form, there's no one there to greet them. It's across a busy road. It's hot as Satan's armpits, and they have no idea where to go.
Right.
So that was something I just thought, how did I miss this? I've read these before. Don't park at the adventure center.
That's your advice on the topic. Don't park.
That's right.
I want everyone to remember that. Like, as you're like thinking about your communication, just remind yourself, never park at never. What was it again?
Right. The adventure center is our indoor climbing gym. Yeah,
it will remind
never
you
park there.
Of this conversation. If we're talking about, it feels like we're talking about communication, because that's so much about culture. Culture is communicating, sure. Right? And like you brought up, it's like families, children, and staff. Like, and we talk about this all the time. 3 very different constituents with very different needs, goals, and wants. And we have to appeal to all of those people with a single website, or when we pick up the phone, speak in a way that's going to be attractive to all the adults in that group. And I think that is the part that sometimes people get stuck on. I mean, okay, let me talk about me. The thing that we got stuck on at Camp Highlight was how to show kids having fun. That was super important, right? But also we're a queer camp, right? So there's the pride flag right there when you load it up. But how do we make this website attractive to parents and kids? We get registrations from the parents and be like, where do you find us? Be like, my kid found you on the internet. And I'm always like, wow, the kid read this webpage. I was like, I never really thought of that before. Is this a kid-friendly webpage? It seems maybe it's too much information. Similarly, staff, it has to hit them too. Do I want to work here? I'm talking way too much. Sorry. I'm very excited today. I don't know. Someone else.
But you have good examples, Chris, so we'll let you have it.
I mean, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I talk to people about. This is what I help people with in my work. So I am actually thinking about this all the time. Every time I walk into a store, am I greeted right away? Am I not greeted right away? And I'm always asking myself, well, what can I take away from that? Does this work? Is that their brand? I could just hang around and try and figure that out. And I just think we should all take inspiration, not just from Disney, right? Or not just from Chuck E. Cheese. Good Lord, Chuck E. Cheese. Not just places that cater to kids, but places that cater to you. Where do you shop? Mm-hmm. What TV stations do you watch? What newspapers and magazines do you buy? And why do you do that? What is it about? If you really broke it down, you might get some really great advice about how to do some things.
I'm interested. Well, I was going to go to you, Heather. Tell me what you're going to say.
Well, when we're talking about being intentional with new families, I also think the culture can be pervasive there. So we really want to think about how a new family looks at your property, at what happens at camp, at the way they are received. Jamonville's been around since 1941. We have 4th, 5th, 6th generation campers. They're not going to read anything I send. They're not going to park at the adventure center. They're probably going to drive right up the main lawn and just park wherever the heck they want to, but that's a different problem. But thinking about those first-time people, is our culture so pervasive that we expect people to know things that they don't know? And if that is the case and we haven't fixed it, do we at least have a culture where questions are greeted warmly? And with thanks so much for asking that question. I'm so sorry you didn't know that. Let me work with that for you. It's that for you. Put a note in there. But thinking about, are the pieces of our culture there because they've always been there, or are they there because they serve our mission?
That's key.
Not the same thing. at all.
I think about that first impression stuff. So websites and your first contact from the camp when you register. I think about that stuff all the time. But I also think about what signals you're giving on when people arrive and what it's like when people show up. Is it just chaos, or have you managed to work within the structure, the physical structure of your camp to make it less chaotic? Sometimes having an overwhelming number of cars show up in an hour can be hard to manage. But
So
what do
you're
you
talking
do?
about parents, by the way. I wanted to be
Drop off.
clear.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, drop off. And you might be a camp that picks up from a certain bus pickup, or that your kids get picked up on the bus to go to day camp. All of it's kind of the same, that bridge between home and camp. What can we do to make people feel comfortable? What can we do to acknowledge their stresses in that moment? What can we do to make sure that they're comfortable as soon as they get there? And then this is where I like the Disney parallels. Like, what can we do to surprise them at this point that makes them feel welcomed? And often we did stuff that we knew would feel magical to the kids, that the parents would know what we're up to, but always heard that the parents appreciated that we would do that thing to make it magical for the kids. So when a kid got dropped off, they would meet with one of the directors as soon as they kind of got on the property, into the main part of the property, and they would ask who's here to come to camp. They get the campers' names. That person would look them up, and then there'd be information on that child on the clipboard. And so we're so grateful you're back for your third summer, Chris. It's great to have you. Nice that you brought your sister Heather for the first time. I know that Beth and Travis were your counselors last year, and you'll be excited to see that they're both back. They're probably not going to be your counselors this year, but they'll be excited to see you. And that little bit of personal stuff, the parents get that we're just reading it off a clipboard and working it into conversation, but we are going to the effort of making that special for their kids. And I think that is a huge signal to parents about how we're going to care for their kids. And I think those things are important and worth considering. I mean, I was lucky enough to work with, I think, the most intentional camp director in our industry. And so I just learned from her that we just do better at these kind of things. And we examine every moment and say, how can this be better? How can this be smoother, less stressful? How can we make the kids feel important? How can we show the parents how we're going to care for their kids?
One example I think of is
That's great.
Camp Glisten in North Georgia has a one road in, one road out. Everybody knows the bottleneck happens at the nurse's table, right? When you're checking in.
Yeah.
And so they looked at that, and they looked at the fact that it's really hard to get privacy to talk with the child. And they came up with the nurse mobile. Most brilliant thing ever. They gave their nurse and a scribe to write things down their own golf cart. And while the families are sitting in line, waiting to even get to the main place, the nurse mobile is coming down and checking them in their cars. So they're still with their families. It's not hot as all get out. They're able to, there's no, I left that in the car when you're asking about the medication, because they're in the car. That might be the most brilliant part. But thinking about what you have to work with and how you can make it work better for the families, I think is just really important.
I love that. I don't have anything to add to this segment, because you two were you should get a Tony for that, or an Oscar. I don't know what would cover podcasts, but that was really sound advice. And the only thing I would say is that what's great about that, what both of you are describing, efficiency and effectiveness. And what's great about that is that the family gets to see that. If they're this organized about drop off, if they're this organized about collecting my kids' meds, I know I feel comfortable leaving my child here. Because like, not only are those things efficient and effective, right? It's also great. It's a great hint at what your invisible culture is. Our staff is friendly, they are present, they are involved, and they are knowledgeable. Welcome to Camp So-and-so. You do all that without even saying it, which is the whole point of building a culture in this way. I was thinking about this, because when you started, Travis, you were saying like, what people experience. I wasn't sure who you were talking about until I clarified, because I think I feel like on this show, we always say one of the biggest mistakes camp directors make. So get ready, everyone. One of the biggest one of the biggest mistakes camp directors make is not being as thoughtful about showcasing their invisible culture to staff when they arrive.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's a sin. It's a sin. So many of these camps are located in rural areas, and they are having people, they're picking up people in the airport coming from France, coming from Nigeria, coming from Poland, coming from Argentina, coming from Colombia, all these places, and then drive them through, and it's usually at night, drive them through it. There's no one else around. Anything you can see is a political sign of something that's pretty heinous. And then they're like, okay, welcome to camp. It's just, you have to think about that. Sure, you can't control what time the planes get in, but when you greet that person, what do you want them to know about your camp? On top of that, this person is working for you, and they're going to be the ones sort of giving visible culture, right? Mm-hmm. So you have this training begins the moment you see your staff. Training begins the very moment that you see them, you greet them at the airport. You need to let them know, hey, present yourself in a certain way. If that's fun, if that's serious, if whatever it is, it's sort of, the modeling has already begun. I can't tell you how many camps I go to, and I'm doing a lot of trainings. So like I'm there when staff is arriving. Yeah, it's sort of like, they just say, put your stuff over there and dump your stuff here. We'll show you where you're living later, which would drive me insane. I'm not leaving my stuff anywhere. I don't know you people, and I'd like to see where I'm sleeping, please. But I think too many people don't think about that. But then people will complain to me later that the staff don't get the culture, or that there's competing cultures at the camp. And I'm like, well, who picked everyone up at the airport? Was it the same person? Did they greet them the same way? That's part of it.
And I will tell you, it feels amazing to go to a camp that can do this well. Their culture is hospitality. Their culture is welcome. And just to go and walk to your cabin, wherever it is, and one camp, every time we went there, would have a welcome sign done in calligraphy of our names.
Ooh la la.
And you're like, obviously somebody invested in this. And it comes back to, I mean, this is the thing for drop-off day. It's the thing for any interactions with parents. As soon as we look sloppy, we lose trust. And so if we look sloppy when we're making people wait in their cars for an hour and then have to wait in a dining hall or a nurse's station for an hour just to talk to somebody before they have to turn around, and some parents do a 4-hour drive back. And it's sloppy. And it's the same for that bit with the staff. Some camps, same experience as Chris, some camps just think that because they're staff, they don't deserve the same level of care as campers, and they don't get the culture that they're showing off by not being intentional around that. Sometimes it's as simple as, if you have international summer camp staff, you should serve friggin' tea. Tea, literally, not just coffee. You should have tea if you have international staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually that. I love that, because I don't drink coffee. I drink tea. But that's really more tea, everyone. Definitely Indeed. More tea.
Indeed. Heather, what are some other things you've been thinking they've come up for you?
Well, sort of tied with the returning campers and the new campers, the families that have come for generations, the new ones, the ones that don't read anything. And we're kind of stuck on check-in right now. So if you want to move on from that, let me know. But we did a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory golden ticket. And we said that if you have filled out all your forms and returned them and actually read the stuff and you've been here before, here's your golden ticket. You can skip the line, go straight to seat, greeting the person who's at the end of the line, who's going to tell you where your cabin is and who you're looking for. And one sort of unexpected benefit to that shouldn't have been unexpected, but it was, because there's never time to think through things all the way. was it gave us space to really focus on the new campers and
Yes.
families.
Yep.
Because everybody else was out of the way. And there also weren't kids setting expectations in line or parents setting expectations to other parents and campers about what the week was going to be like in big ways and small ways. Stuff like when they do the sneak out, you're not really sneaking out, right? Like Heather knows that you're not in your cabin.
It's
Like just you're
so
ruining the
disappointing.
surprise.
yeah.
Right.
All my
But-
children's sneak outs were supervised. Well
Yeah.
supervised.
Yep.
But also when you're 10 years old and you have the inside track on somebody and you're meeting something and you're meeting somebody new to be your friend, you're going to spill the tea. Yeah, go back to tea. But they really
It all
know you're
comes
sneaking
together.
out, right? Yeah. Right. So that unexpected benefit really helped.
Yeah.
to be
That's
able
such a
to-
smart idea too. Like I'm just picturing like a parent who sent everything in like a week before camp that just gets something in the mail. It's just a golden ticket. Like it's again already saying like, hey, we appreciate that you've done all the work, right? And
Yes,
that's what we
yes.
reward here, right? Someone following the directions, right? And doing all the work. Success, right? Without saying any of it. I have one last thought.
Great.
Like for me, like you two can still
Yeah.
have thoughts, but okay, my one last thought and my advice to people is have a culture.
Yeah.
Have a culture for a bunch of reasons. Most of what we said here, but if you look at media representations of camp, there
Mhm.
aren't many of them. And most of the plot lines in those either revolve around kids' sexual activity or the laxness of staff. So you have to understand that when people arrive or they come to our website, they think that is our invisible culture and we have to go uphill. They think that's what camp is. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from parents, like heard just what I said in different words. Oh, we had no idea what to expect because I saw Adam's Family Values and that was the only time I've never been to camp. So they already think our invisible culture is one of neglect. So you need to have a culture. You need to think about, okay, what do I want them to, what are the 3 things I want people to take away from this? And how do I communicate that before they arrive?
I know we're on the same page as this. I just want to challenge the way you're wording it, Chris.
Sure.
Every camp has a culture. It's whether you're intentional about that culture.
Yeah.
So if you're not intentional about it, you still have a culture.
Yeah.
And it
fractured
may
one.
not be, certainly may not be what you're promising to the world or what you promised to parents. And so there is an element, there's always a culture there. You just have to be thoughtful about how we present it and that it matches what we've promised to parents.
And I think having a faulty culture is better than not doing the work.
Yeah.
It's much better than having conflicting
yeah.
cultures at camp, especially when it comes to calling parents at home, but also it messes with the kids, with returners, if they don't have any idea what to expect because things are changing, or like on this side of camp, they do it one way and this, they do it the other way. It's just too confusing. Like how does that kid describe your camp to someone else in their school? What's the one thing they're going to say? Like, it's probably positive, but you don't know what the one thing is. And I find that to be a problem. Oh crap. I said I was going to have one last thought. Then I said that. Okay. That was my last thought.
Heather, do you have a last thought on this topic?
I think well-curated tradition as a
Mhm.
part of your culture is important. Things again that help you get to the mission or are part of the mission, even if we do this for fun, but we've been doing this since 1965. And we're taking things that are not fun, that weren't fun when we were campers and aren't fun now, like snipe hunts. And we're
Right.
moving that out of our culture intentionally.
That's really great. I had 2 just examples that I want to illustrate of the level of intention that you can offer to families. Camp Withrow, former CampHacker podcaster Gabrielle and her mom Jackie, they noticed, and this is part of it too, just noticing skills was an episode Chris and I did this year. Noticing skills as a camp director, so incredibly important, and figuring out the ways to take off your own blinders about your camp. Withrow noticed that when kids would arrive at camp, there would be returning campers who knew each other and greeted each other and had a big show about getting to see each other. And then there'd be new campers. And the new campers were never part of that thing and never part of that moment. And when it's your first time nervous at camp, you're not thinking, oh, that'll probably be me next year. You're 9, you're thinking, oh gosh, I hope I fit in here. So what they did is they have a staggered arrival. So returning campers arrive and have an hour. So they have an hour to arrive, an hour on their own for the screaming and the "it's so good to see you" and all of those things, and then they bring in new campers, because what they've done is they've let the returning campers get that out of their system, and then they've specifically front loaded with them. You are now our ambassadors. Your job, you've met your friends, you're going to get to see them again, you've had that big moment. Now it's your job to make the new campers welcome. And that, I think, just changes how parents, I mean, it's a level of intentionality that parents may not even notice when it's built in, but they would feel it if they brought one kid, then the culture changed, or that the procedure changed, and then 3 years later they bring their next kid. They would feel it for sure.
We do a similar thing with our staff. Our returners come in the day before. We tell them, get all your stuff out, all the inside jokes, all the everything, get it out, because it's going to be your job to welcome the new staff when they come.
Thank you both for this discussion. I want to move us on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
If you are a fan of Heather and following her here from the Fundraising at Camp podcast, and this is your first time listening to CampHacker, Tool of the Week is what we ask our guests to bring that might be something that would help you become a better camp director and or a resource for you in your job. And they're all over the place. And this is a perfect example. Our 3 examples today are definitely all over the place. I'm going to start us off. I don't usually do that, but I'm going to do it to mix things up a little bit. I saw today on TikTok a young woman whose dad was a psychology professor, and she, just to push her dad's button, said, hey, guess what we're doing in my high school sociology class? We're doing a personality test. And his head just whipped around, and he said, you're not doing Myers-Briggs, right? She's like, yes, we're doing Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs has been proven to have no real statistical significance. And the ones that are sort of spun off from them, True Colors is another one spun off from that, and Beth and I both True Colors facilitators, but the validity of the science is being challenged these days. What she did as a follow-up on that TikTok was her dad talking about the scientifically relevant personality test, because I think some sort of personality test is helpful because it gives you a common language to meet new people where they're at and to understand some people differently, or just how they're different from you. And so she posted a TikTok with links to the new proven good personality test that would give you some of the same lessons and that feeling of whatever your letter salad was of being a Myers-Briggs person and finding somebody like that. This would give you an understanding of yourself and others. So check out our show notes at camphacker.tv/podcast, and you'll see the link there to watch it. And they list the guy and his daughter list 5 that are available, and some of them are just scored automatically and have the how to work this into your knowledge and use of it. So you can check that out, camphacker.tv/podcast. My other favorite thing about this link is that it's a TikTok, but it's still pictures and not videos. And the first picture is of her dad in a dress with fairy wings on, and that's the opener for it. So go check out that from the link. Heather, what's your tool?
Well, I actually changed it because of where our conversation went.
Okay.
But my tool is Raving Fans. It's a book by Ken Blanchard. It's old. It's maybe a little bit of a rusty tool, but published in 1993. It's been updated some since then, but it's about really taking care of your customers. So Raving Fans, Ken Blanchard, that is my tool of the week.
Chris, how about you?
Oh, my recommendation is a website. Someone I met at a conference once, their name was River, and they were very interested in learning about Camp Highlight. I'm like, that's great. And they told me it's because they maintain a website that has a list of all the queer camps in the country and actually around the world. And I want to share that link because, one, you should know at Camp Highlight, which is a sleepaway camp for kids who have queer parents, we get a lot of calls of parents of queer kids, and they want to know where we can send their kids to be safe. And it's like, well, that's not our catchment, but type. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Let me send you a couple of phone numbers. I think it's just a great thing to be aware that these camps exist and that they're out there, and we're doing the work, and we will continue doing the work. Yeah. So it's just a resource in case it comes up like, oh, a queer camp or staff or family ask you, check it out.
It's great. And just a quick look through, there are camps all over. So it should be easy enough for you to recommend to family in your area. Thank you both for that. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so grateful to have you back on the network.
Thanks for having me. It's been great to be back. And Chris, you're a delight. I had so much fun with you this hour.
Thank you so much. I love compliments. That's my favorite thing.
Excellent.
Wow, that was great.
Heather, if people have a follow-up question, how can they get in touch?
They can email me at heather@jamonville.org. As you might remember, there's no ville like Jamonville.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you, Heather. We're so grateful to have you. Chris, thanks for a good show. How can people get in touch?
Well, if you want to find me, look to the western sky, as someone told me lately. No, sorry, that's wicked. If you want to find me, then you need to get on the internet and type Chris at Planet Chris in your email program, because I'm from the 80s, and then send it over, and I'll see it and be like, oh, work, and then I'll write you back.
Excellent. You said Chris at Planet Chris. What's the ending of your email?
Thank you. Chris at planetchris.net. That's Chris at planetchris.net.
That's perfect. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you both. Thank you so much. I want to take 1 second and just remind you that there are other shows on the Go Camp Pro network. The Camp Owners Pod just put out an episode, and it looks like a great one. I'm so excited to download it. So I would encourage you to go to your app, and even if you're not a camp owner, there's lots of things to learn from Kelly and Howie in the Camp Owners Pod. So search for that there and subscribe to it in your podcast app. And thanks for the evening, friends.
The CampHacker Podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, if you've gotten even one good idea from a Go Camp Pro podcast, a masterclass, from the Summer Camp Pros group on Facebook, at a conference, or wherever else, we ask that you give credit where credit is due. That way, we can encourage camp pros to keep freely sharing their brilliant ideas and make the camp industry better. Thanks very much.